It is 5:01 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Declaration of a quorum of 7 members present. We'll move us to item C1, public comment. There are no comments. So we will move to item D1, consideration and discussion regarding possible dates for a board workshop to consult with prospective strategic plan facilitators. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. As we've been discussing for some time, we need to get ourselves situated for some strategic planning work in the spring. We've done some preliminary work and identified a couple possible facilitators. And we have a couple of dates to consider for them to come discuss what that process might look like from their standpoint as a facilitator. I shared those dates with you previously, but I'll go through them now. What I hope to do is for us to be able to decide on one of these 3 dates where we could have our facilitators come in and again present to the board, allow you to ask questions, see which of the 2 you connect more with as far as we vision forward with the school district. So those dates that I shared were November 30th, which is the Monday as soon as we return after Thanksgiving, 11 to 2. All of these are 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And let me kind of explain that structure. We'd probably have one come at 11 o'clock, have break for lunch, have the second one come after lunch. So we'd probably do it with 2 different postings. December the 3rd, which is the Thursday of the week we return after Thanksgiving, and December the 8th, which is the second week after Thanksgiving, and that's a Tuesday. So is there a preference amongst the group, or is there an absolute no-go date, and maybe we work it that direction? Are these possibilities?
I'm good with all 3.
Here
it is.
Sorry, my no-go date's November 30th.
As is mine. So that works out real nice.
My preference is December 8th, if I can put that out there.
Yeah. I can make any of the 3 work, but December 8th is best.
It's best.
Yeah.
December 8th?
Yeah, that's fine.
Once,
I
on
just,
twice.
I have to miss.
Do we have another person this affects that's not at the table?
Oh, that's,
I have it on good word that the calendar is will work for any of those options.
Nobody's concerned about my calendar?
Sorry, I should have looked at you, Mr. Schaefer, to see, would December 8th suffice for your
I
calendar?
think that is going to work out fine.
I'll have to make my apologies to Head Start Policy Council on the 8th, but I think they'll be all right. It'll work.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
Very good. Tuesday, December the 8th, I'll follow up with some additional communication. We'll go ahead and put that in your calendar and block out that 11 to 2. We'll do the appropriate postings that go with that. There we go, Mr. Schaefer.
Okay, we will move to item 2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 2021-22 school calendar development process. Mr. Martindale.
All right, it is that time of the year. Even though it's November, that process has begun, and actually it's been going with DEIC for a couple of months now. So to share additional feedback, more details as far as the work with next year's school calendar and DEIC is Dr. Trammell.
Okay.
Dr. Trammell?
Good evening, everyone. We are in the throes of getting the calendar out for public input and come to you tonight with a recommendation from the DEIC. As you know, we started working on the calendar in October. DEIC was given parameters and an invitation to give input via a Google form. We created draft calendars and brought those to DEIC in November. We divided up into groups, and each group went through all 3 proposed calendars and were allowed to give written input in their small group, and then they were allowed to give additional input via an individual survey. We had 3 calendars brought to DEIC. when they voted for their favorite calendar and their least favorite calendar to move forward to you all, 90% of them voted against calendar C. So we are not bringing calendar C forward to you tonight for consideration of getting public input. We will be bringing calendar A and calendar B. There were a few recommendations for just changes. When I look at the changes for calendar B, there were issues, of course, with the 2 comp days at Thanksgiving. They would like comp days to be in the spring rather than the fall. Thanksgiving is a tough time for comp days. It really centered around, obviously, those comp days that were scheduled in calendar B. B is very similar to A, so we will get going on looking at those now. Just a reminder that we do have to have 75,600 minutes of instruction bell to bell for each calendar year. We have given calendar A and B to our PEAMS director, and she has checked those minutes, and we are well beyond that, so we're good to go as far as instructional minutes on both of the calendars we bring tonight. In looking at calendar A, get it pulled up here, we have 5 professional learning days in August with a school start date for students on the 17th, which is a 4-day week. We have Labor Day off. We have a long weekend for students and parents in October. One of those days would be an elementary conference day, and a professional learning day for elementary would be the other day. And then both of those at the secondary level would be professional learning. We have the whole week of Thanksgiving off as a holiday for everyone. We get out for early release for the winter holiday on the 17th. Students would come back on January the 5th, which is a Wednesday. Staff would have a comp day built in January to work on some things. I know we mentioned the reading academies and some initiatives last year. They would use this time for some of those learning opportunities. And then the 4th would be a professional development day for everyone. The 17th is Martin Luther King Day and would be a holiday for everyone, students and staff. The 21st is President's Day, and we would again have 2 professional learning days in February, the Friday and the Monday. We felt like that was most similar to this year. You'll find if you compare this year's calendar that we originally adopted and that the community voted to adopt, it is almost identical to calendar A. So this would be the calendar that looks like this year started out as being. But we would use that for much needed professional learning. We've had to put some of that on hold due to our current circumstances, and so we would hope to have that as we did in the original calendar for this year. We would have spring break in March. Good Friday is April the 15th, so that would be a holiday for everyone. The last day of school for students would be May 26th with an early release day on that day, and then we would have a professional learning day on the 27th for staff. And that would mean our high school graduation for our 3 high schools would probably start on the 26th, since that is an early release day. So that's calendar A. If we look at calendar B, you're going to notice they're very similar. I made a few tweaks based on input from DEIC. So this is what calendar B looks like at this point. Calendar B has, oops, this is the wrong calendar B linked, sorry. Let me go back here and find calendar B. Sorry, thank you, David. Okay. You would not believe the number of times that all of that was checked. Okay. Okay, so this is still the wrong one. Take it off, yeah. How many calendar Bs do I have, right? I can walk you through calendar B. I'm not sure why it didn't link correctly, because I did check that. So I'll show you calendar B and tell you the changes that were made on it in relation to feedback from DEIC. So instead of starting on the 18th, calendar B would start on the 17th. The 6th would still be, so the first day of students would be the 17th on the calendar B. We would still have Labor Day off. We would still have the 2 days at October. Instead of having 2 comp days in November during the week of Thanksgiving, we've moved one to the January day and left one. We have early release on the 17th for students. The 5th would be a professional learning day instead of the first day for students. The 6th would be the first day for students, and I have a slide in a minute that'll show that a little bit better. We have President's Day as a professional learning day, and we have the week of March 14th off for spring break. We have Good Friday off, and again, early release on the 16th with the 27th being a professional learning day. If we look at that in a different form, probably better, it looks like this. So you'll notice that in red, or red-ish, the teachers would report on August the 9th on calendar A and August the 10th on calendar B. The comp days or student holidays in November, A has none, B has one, and that would allow teachers to work on things like those reading academies on their own time and earn that credit so that they're not working on it and not getting professional development hour credit for that. The holiday for Thanksgiving is a full week for students on both calendars. For district personnel, it would be Tuesday through Friday. Same thing for winter break. Winter break is the same. And we go all the way through the third on that. If we come back to, I changed the student holiday. So students are still out for holiday on January the 3rd, but staff has a comp day on January the 3rd. On January the 4th, on calendar A, it is a professional learning day. On calendar B, it is the 4th and the 5th as professional learning days. On the other difference would be in February, calendar A has a Friday and a Monday off, sandwiched around President's Day. Calendar B just has President's Day as a professional learning day. So again, you'll see like the trend for the 2 days, a Friday and a Monday. That's so campuses can have professional learning time based on the needs that principals see of the teachers on their campus. And that is so the district can have professional learning time for initiatives surrounding things like the requirements of House Bill 3 and some of our, feedback initiatives with formative feedback in lessons. We have a variety of things on the list that have been kind of pushed forward from this year that didn't happen because our teachers have used all of their time to kind of gear up for virtual learning and making sure their skills are up to par with our learning management system. So really very little difference between calendar A and calendar B. The biggest difference for parents would be on calendar B, they get an extra day over the winter break. They would not come back until the 6th of January on calendar B. And calendar A has a holiday for teachers on January the 3rd, or a comp day. Calendar B also now has a comp day with a change made from November. So, and then we have 2 professional learning days, the 4th and the 5th. So really, I guess for parents, on calendar A, they would come back on the 5th. On calendar B, students would come back on the 6th. And that's really the only real difference for parents in these 2 calendars. That, and then in February, One calendar has a professional development day on President's Day, and calendar B has the sandwich days, one on the Friday before and then one on President's Day. So those are the two significant differences for our families. So it would depend on, if they wanted to take a long weekend, they would probably vote for calendar A with the 18th, the Friday the 18th and the 21st in February. And then we would have professional learning in the district. So calendar A is pretty much identical to the calendar this year that was adopted, and calendar B just has a few tweaks.
Not to muddy the waters or bring
Sure.
it on there, but you said 90%, there was a calendar C that 90% of
There was
people-
a calendar C, and they had.
Was there something out there that just really made them not like that for 90%?
Well, we had an earlier start date, and we had comp days and Thanksgiving. I think the biggest thing that made people cringe was we didn't get out for the winter holiday break until December the 22nd. And so that was they just did not like that because that gave them, essentially 2 days before Christmas. So that was a big negative for that calendar.
Yeah, I remember that being a deal breaker the prior year as well.
Yeah. So, plus we had a parent in DEIC that said, it's kind of difficult to get plane tickets at the last minute and to get out of town and get to where they're going to enjoy Christmas with their family, that would be really difficult. So I think that's another reason calendar C got 90% disapproval rate. So we would like to recommend the modified calendar B and calendar A to go out for community input. And that we would take care of that sometime after the Thanksgiving holiday and getting that out. And then as you can see on the timeline, we would probably come back to you with that community feedback and a proposed calendar in January for your approval based on that. So no real action at this time, but if you have comments or input, we would invite them at this time.
I just think it's interesting that it does seem like we are kind of, as a district, honing in on a similar calendar from this year and then what we're proposing.
Yeah.
And really both of these very similar
Yeah.
calendars. So,
Right.
yeah, obviously
people
we'll
were-
get the feedback from the community, but
Yeah, the committee overall, 80% of them said A was their favorite calendar.
from that.
So it's pretty significant. I agree. They're most comfortable with the calendar we had this year. Any other questions or comments?
And Penny, you said we'll post this for feedback when we return from the holidays.
After we return from the break. So I emailed Kelly Derrick today to let her know we would be doing that, and so she can get ready for all the back-end stuff she has to do in technology to get that ready.
Oh, can I add one more thing? I really like that you laid out the comparisons. I know we need to update that one a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think that's very helpful for people to see, just kind of clarifying, there's not a whole lot of differences, right?
There's really not,
It's just
right.
this compared to that, so
Yeah.
I thought that was helpful.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We will move to item D3, consideration and discussion of CSISD's current and future debt position. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Mr. Oz is here with us to share the results of some of our debt restructure from September and October, and just give us an update on where we stand on the INS and debt service side of the district's budget and capacities. So, Ms. Strauss?
Thank you very much. So what I'd like to go over with you tonight is, first of all, the results of our 2020 bond refunding that we did in October, a little bit on our tax rate history, The current outstanding debt that College Station ISD has, our bond referendum history, and future capacity that we may have for any bonds that may come up later. First of all, the 2020 bond refunding that you as a Board of Trustees authorized Mr. Martindale and myself to do, that was $11.8 million. And remember, it had some parameters that we had to stay within, otherwise we would have to come back to you. But the details of that bond refunding started October 1st, and we actually closed and delivered the funds on October 29th. We ended up with a fixed rate of 0.403%, so that was awesome. Final maturity date for these bonds is August 15th, 2024. So that $11 million will be paid off at that point. This debt is now non-callable, so we won't be coming back to you to refund or pay early. We've got to stick to this schedule. During the process, the district had to be rated financially, and Moody's rating agency did it for us, and the district was affirmed a AA1 rating. So during these tough economic times, I think just being able to keep that good rating was awesome for College Station ISD, so it says a lot for us. The debt is guaranteed by the Permanent School Fund, which that's what helped get us that 0.4% interest rate. The sale was negotiated, and our underwriters were Raymond James and Piper Sandler Company, so they did a great job for us. Overall, the net present value savings on this transaction was $564,826, or 4.773%. The threshold that we were given was 3%, so we did much better than the threshold that we were provided. So again, thanks to our underwriters and our financial advisors for that. Tax rate history, this kind of just tells you where we've been in the past from 2011 till now. You can see there is a bit of an increase around the 16-17 year, and that was when those 2015 bonds were being sold. So that was planned and told to the taxpayers at that time that was what would occur with that particular bond. But now we're at 1.229 for this year. So that's where we're at, with a 0.263 on our debt rate and 0.966 on our maintenance and operations rate. So we have had some declines over the last several years. This is our existing debt, which is out there on the website and a number of places. But the important thing to note is that the dollars in blue are what is coming up for a redemption or a refunding, either one. So those are coming up and available for some future savings as well. And you have authorized us to do an advance payment. We're waiting until spring when we know exactly what would be in the best interest and how much. So that will be coming a little bit later. So in 2015, there was $135.9 million, and it passed with a 73% favorable vote from our taxpayers. In 2013, $83.5 million with a 69% passing rate. 2009, $144.2 million at 71%, and May of 2007, $67.4 million or thereabouts with a 71%. So College Station ISD has had very good success. We thank our community for that as well with these 70%. So that's very good. I think one thing to note of interest is that from 2007, 2009, 2 years span between those. Then you had a 4-year span, a 2-year span. And right now we're at 5 years. So it's going to be 5+ years since the last bond referendum. So in a growing district and with everything that we have to pay for with bonds, we're really pushing it for what we have done in the past. So when you're looking at any future bond referendums, like I said, it will be 5+ years because we're at 5 right now. We all know that enrollment drives our need for additional campuses, and with the pandemic that we've been through and our slight decline, we're not quite sure where our enrollment's going. So it's uncertain as to say when we need a bond referendum for additional facilities. And I will mention that our demographer is scheduled to present updated information to you at the December board meeting. So we'll get a little bit update there.
And Amy, I'll touch on that one. Templeton is scheduled to come and share their latest projections at the December meeting. They have done it a time or two in November, but considering the circumstances, we thought if we went ahead and pushed it back a month, maybe we'd have a little bit cleaner data. But they will be here in December to provide us that update. And of course, we'll take that projection information and apply our FC local policy to kind of look at capacity numbers for facilities and all those types of things.
So we're looking at new facilities, but unfortunately, there's other needs of the district that continue to occur while we're waiting for that to happen. And those are things in the past that College Station ISD has funded with bonds, and they still can be, and it's probably much needed. But things like buses, technology, building renovations, and what I call deferred maintenance. Those would be roofs, HVAC systems, those really big ticket items that we have to do to our buildings to keep them up and going. So we've got those to consider. So in doing that, what we asked our financial advisors to help us with is to say, what bond capacity do we have coming up with our same property tax rate, because we know we're going to have to come out for a larger amount when we need that new facility. If we had no change through 2022 in our property values. That's unusual for College Station. You normally have growth, but in these economic times and the businesses, we're very unsure of that. So we ran some numbers and making some assumptions on the interest rates and those terms, and estimated if we have no growth from here on out, with all the debt that's falling off and what we can refund and refinance to save, that College Station could reasonably issue $58.9 million and still keep that 0.263 tax rate. Now, I realize he's estimating interest rates, so that's all based on some assumptions. So then kind of a worst case scenario. So what if our property values decline? We know our appraisal district had a lot of appeals this past year, so we're expecting that again. So I said, run that with a 2% decline between now and 2022, and then hold it the same. And with that, $44.5 million is what he's estimated our capacity to be, and still be able to keep that 0.263 tax rate. So why might we want to consider some new debt at this point? First and foremost, it's going to allow us to address our needs that I told you about earlier now or in the near future, rather than 2 to 3 years or when we're waiting for that new facility to come out. We'll be taking advantage of low interest rates that we've been in for a while now. We'll be able to utilize property values and retired debt to manage that tax rate at 0.263. Still leaving capacity for that larger bond in a few more years, so we don't have to go up on that tax rate a large amount at that point in time. And it lowers the amount of that next bond issue with the other one, because we'll be dealing with the buses and things like that now. So that was very quick overview, so I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Amy, will you go back to the chart that shows the no growth and 2% decline? So that's no change in FY22 on appraised values, current total property values. So if there were zero growth in values and the same INS tax rate, then we have that capacity of $58.9 million.
Yes.
Correct? And if our property values went down, and I've been here for 14 years and I've never experienced that, but maybe if they went down, then that's the 44 million and kept the same rate.
Right.
Right? That's what.
Correct.
Okay.
And anything in between there that you did, then, you could, to give yourself capacity, These are all based on assumptions. You could do it over less than 25 years, do a lesser amount, still keep that. Maybe we'll pay it off faster. So there's a lot of scenarios. These are just two what-ifs.
And you don't have to, even with the first one, it gives capacity up to 58.9. That doesn't mean you're locked into 58.9.
No, that's what I'm saying. You
That's
could
just a
do
ceiling.
anything and structure it differently. And like I said, now, in the spring, we'll know more about what our values, our growth is for 2021. So that will help us even get tighter on what that number might be.
And in my opinion, that 2%, that's pretty aggressive.
I think it is very aggressive, but that's kind of what I would call hopefully a worst case scenario that we never get to.
A couple of questions or thoughts. I mean, obviously, we heard at the transportation meeting about some possible needs for buses in the next year or two, a couple of years. What's the process going on to identify some of the other renovations and maintenance stuff that
Sure.
we may?
Mr. Hall, the Executive Director of Facilities, they keep a running list, and we have a facility study, and it's been updated, I believe, about a year ago. So they have listed the chillers, the HVAC, the roofs, these high-dollar items, as well as maybe some slight modifications to buildings and those things that are aging out. So they have some help identifying those, and so we've kind of been charting it and what's coming up in the next several years that needs to be addressed. And some of those may have been scheduled, even a year ago, but due to funding, the equipment's held up, so we haven't done it. So we do have a very good comprehensive list to get started on the maintenance side in buildings.
So for those on the board that have a lot more institutional history knowledge than I do, I'm thinking about next month when Templeton is here. How their numbers, are they generally fairly accurate? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to think of questions that I might want to ask next month in regard to, how much weight we give those numbers. And of course, there's, COVID, which also, comes into all this, but.
Interesting question. I think relatively speaking, they've been in the ballpark. Obviously, they've done this for us for a number of years that kind of positioned us with the facilities we have now. Of course, any projection previously and then what is occurring now has adjusted that baseline number. So I don't know. They'll have to give you the science to their projections when they come, because I'm not real sure what applies at this point because of circumstances as to what exactly is going to be a reliable indicator, because we've never been through a pandemic. So what I do know is if we look at last year and we think about last year's projections, I can think of the high school right off the bat. And the high schools are right there as to where we projected them for this current year. Where you see a little bit of difference, of course, at the elementaries, but we knew we were off in the lower grade levels. That's where you see some of the loss in enrollment this year with the pandemic. So when we laid FC Local over that last year and looked at it, we did some movement with some of our programs at the elementary level. So if we color code that chart, and I looked at it not that long ago because I kind of went through this with the PAC committee and just showed them some of our numbers, in particular at the intermediate and middle school levels. You don't see any red really showing up capacity issues at the elementary level until maybe one campus way out in 2025, but there's capacity at other campuses. At the 5 through 8, you don't see it, but I will tell you that you notice that Pecan Trail and Welborn, have more students than their sister schools. The high school becomes a conversation piece several years from now as well. Their projections have been in the ballpark.
so
The
we've been
problem
pretty-
is circumstances are so different right now that it's probably going to be difficult to project with significant degree of accuracy for anybody simply because of the unknown. I think we're probably, from a facility standpoint, we're okay for a little while, especially considering since our enrollment's down a couple of hundred right now. Now, what you could see is a projection for 2% growth next year. We get the 2% plus the 200 we lost this year. That's really the unknown. But they've been within the ballpark and for us to manage things for probably, I guess they probably started doing it last 5-6 years for us.
Okay.
And Josh, I'd probably comment also on the development, like Southern Point, for example, that was supposed to come on board a lot sooner than it was. Now that we're actually seeing rooftops, I mean, they're having to project on what other developers are saying that they're fixing to do. And when they didn't fixing to do it, I mean, that's, they're having to play that game of, developers presenting something that they're going to develop and the timing of that. So that's always kind of played with those numbers too.
Yeah, and to follow on that, I was thinking the same thing, that I think in what I've seen is the overall numbers are pretty good, but knowing exactly where somebody's going to build that house and live it gets a little bit harder to predict for sure.
And they also warn not to look beyond 5 years. So they even say that gets really tough.
They'll give us 10 in their numbers, but yeah. Actually, when we apply FC local, we go 5 years.
Well, I think it was a good thing too that we were able to move some of those programs and so forth. So that was, thank you.
Good question.
Anything else?
Back to this, can you flip quickly back to the previous bonds that were approved?
This one?
Yes, I was just actually noticing the number of votes cast for each of those.
Yeah.
They all happened at times with not a lot of other big things going on in the elections. And obviously the first couple happened before we changed our elections to November. So just something to think about. I just wanted to just check those.
And also those were coordinated around the city of College Station when the city was doing their bond packages too.
Okay. Yeah, there weren't any other bigger things outside nationally or otherwise going on.
I'm going to try not to take it personal, but one of those years was my election.
I'm glad the results didn't turn out that close.
It probably helped.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
one more quick thing. Process or timeline, if we are looking at a November bond, what is your timeline for this?
If you are thinking of potentially November 2021, then I would probably like to come back to you next month and go over some timelines for that. And some things have changed since you've done a bond in 2015. Some of the rules on what has to be in a separate referendum, what doesn't. So probably come back and share some of that information if y'all are interested in December, along with the timeline. I will tell you that in looking ahead, I believe the deadline to actually call that bond referendum for November 2021 is in August of 2021.
Okay.
So that's when the board would have to take action, but we would be doing planning, of course, starting very quickly. So I can certainly come back in December with some more information.
And Mr. Martindale, would planning include community groups, asking
Through the
them,
course of the spring, yes.
asking them what they saw as a need?
I think next month, if it's the board's wish, Amy can come back with some tentative timelines. And then, of course, as a part of that process, kind of share an idea of some of the projects that have been identified, just to give you an idea. Not that that would be obviously a commitment of any sort, but give you an idea. The architects and Mr. Hall keep a running list of these things that is updated probably every couple of years. And I know the one he has now was updated just last spring. So she could come back with some of that information, take a look at it, and they can lead us to future conversation in January, February, but anything, something like this, obviously, we'd want to pull together a planning committee and share potential projects and get feedback and those types of things. And I do, Amy, this is conversation strictly around renovations, buses, transportation. There would be nothing at this point in time pending Templeton surprising us with something regarding new facilities, correct?
Not that I see in the way of new facilities, no.
And another piece that we always consider in this conversation, Geraldine, is land also. We have 3 pieces of land in inventory, and land just becomes more scarce by the day. So, there's obviously a number of things that we could discuss, and through Amy's good work and Victor Quiro, our financial advisor, we're positioned to be able to look at some things and not impact our INS rate at all, and do some things for the district that are needs.
Yeah, I would say we should go ahead and look at a timeline and look at what those needs are that the district sees right now, at least discuss it.
We'll be glad to bring that back to you next
Agreed.
month.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with the way that the funding from the legislature, this is the way that we're going to have to pay for those down the road.
Yeah, it's changed over many years ago that they pushed a lot of things to bond referendums, so we don't have the capacity and the maintenance side to do it.
On a lighter note, I'm glad this is next month's meeting.
You can always come back. Okay, anything else? Thank you.
You can do public comment.
I think I will put that on my calendar. That brings us to item D4, consideration and discussion related to pre-AP courses for the 2021-22 school year and beyond, and associated adjustments to board policy EIC local. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. I believe Dr. Trammell is going to walk us through a brief presentation that we've discussed several times previously, and just give you kind of a preview of what impact that would have or what it would look like in regard to policy. There's no action on this item, obviously, at this time, so we just continue the conversation. Dr. Trammell?
Okay. All right. Just a quick review. We did have a committee put together to consider participating in the College Board's new pre-AP. And the goal of the committee was to consider the College Board's new requirements with respect to pre-AP and to consider alignment of advanced courses to ensure the integrity and rigor of all of our 5.0 courses. The committee recommendation was to streamline the language for 5.0 courses. All 5.0 courses would either be advanced or AP, and in math and science, honors and pre-AP courses would be renamed advanced, and then streamline the course structure in English and social studies to mirror that of math and science. Why the committee made this recommendation? Well, the College Board clearly states on their website that their new pre-AP program is not advanced and it is not honors. We had 5.0 attached to our pre-AP here in College Station, and so considering that they are saying it is not advanced and it is not honors, we could no longer have that GPA attached to that curriculum. There was also a slight cost to it. A cost would never keep us from doing what we feel is right for students, but a cost of about $72,000 for both of our high schools to participate in that, plus additional funds for teacher training. Alignment of course structure, and that would be to bring our reading or our English and our social studies in line with the same structure that we have for math and science, and then to provide equity in all 5.0 courses. I know I mentioned Ms. Hester had given me a history lesson of why we had honors to start with, and that was because we created that on our own before we had pre-AP and AP. So in looking at what was done across the district, there was great inequity from teacher to teacher and certainly building to building in those courses. So this is an opportunity for us to ensure rigor and equity in all of our coursework. To review quickly what that looks like, there would be no changes in math. We had a two-tier system in math before. We would continue with that two-tier system. The dark blue over here is what it was previously called when we looked at our pre-AP courses, and then we obviously have recommended the name change to advanced. Same thing in science. We had pre-AP courses and AP courses in science and one honors course. The pre-AP courses and honors course would be renamed to advanced. So it's still the two-tier, though, at every course. Then in English, we had basically three options, the honors and the pre-AP for English 1 and English 2. For English 3, we had honors and AP, and then for English 4, we had honors and AP as well. So the committee's recommendation was to make the English 1 and 2 advanced, and obviously to keep the AP option in English 3 and 4. Same thing with social studies. If we look at the different offerings in the dark blue and then the recommendation in white, we have aligned that structure with the structure in math and science so that all of our coursework is aligned with the same structure. That would include the fine arts as well. And Mr. Eakes has been working very diligently on that. What does that mean if I'm in honor, or advanced if I'm in orchestra or band? What are the expectations that are additional? And we would standardize that across the district. The proposed policy change is really very minimal. On Tier 1, which would be our advanced courses, we would change the language from pre-AP and honors to advanced. So it would be taking those two words and changing the language to advanced to come in line with the structure across all content areas. So basically, that's it. This would be the policy that we would bring to the board to approve, hopefully at the December board meeting. And with that, questions or comments?
Dr. Trimble, our high school principal, providing this information in the newsletter after Thanksgiving, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Martindale. We have had discussions here in board meetings or board workshops for several months in a row. And in addition, Mr. Martindale has spoke of this change at several community meetings that he attends, and the high school principals are including in their next newsletter information regarding this for our parents. I put an example of defining advanced in the transmittal, and that's really something that has needed to happen for a long time. To give you just an idea of what that looks like, we would go to, I think I put literacy in there. We can look at science. When we look at this, we would include in the course catalog with the write-up of what advanced is, we would include the additional, you can see we're getting input from teachers, so this is draft and really draft. But like the advanced biology would add organic chemistry, and you can see, like for knowledge, 2 additional knowledge components, and for skills, 4 additional skills components. So if we look at literacy, which is English, this is draft. Mr. Hogan wants us to know this is very, very, very draft. We would see the general definition, and then in English 1 and 2 advanced, or English 1 and 2 on level, we would have what you see here. Sorry, didn't know that was a touchscreen. And on the right, you see the comparison for English 1 and English 2 advanced. And you can see the additional criteria. So this is something that hasn't been done in the past, that we feel anything that is weighted as far as GPA, we need to really clarify that, and we need to train teachers so that they are aware of exactly what that looks like in the classroom, and that we are calibrated across the district. So no matter who my teacher is or what school I attend, the same expectations are going to be there for that weighted GPA. So with that, just wanted to reinforce that. I know I will be including more in the transmittal as we get it out of draft form for you all to see the specifics, and then that will be available to our parents. Oh, sorry, I'm just clicking all through. That will be available to our parents throughout, the spring in the course catalog. So we'll have a link to those comparison tables for each course that is a 5.0 course. So if I'm a student or a parent and I'm trying to make up my mind, what do I want to take this on level, or do I want to take an advanced class, then it will be very, very clearly defined, and I will know exactly what that entails. Our teachers, a reminder, the teachers on the committee that currently teach our honors and pre-AP felt very comfortable that the students sitting in those classrooms were capable of AP work. They are capable of advanced work. What we have lacked in the past is the calibration and the clear expectations for our teachers and our students and parents. So that is what we are working on providing, and we'll come to you for those word changes in the policy next month.
So that's one question I did have, just kind of digesting this over the last few weeks and things like that.
Sure.
How does a parent or student feel confident about being in an honors class and either taking and I might be phrasing this completely
That's
wrong, and
okay.
my apologies,
Yeah.
taking a step back into the on-level course or jumping into the advanced side? How can a student / parent decipher between those? And I understand what you just said about the teachers that teach honors and advanced, but I feel like we're taking an opportunity away from students that are in those honors classes that are accelerated from the on level, but might not be able to keep up on the pre-AP side. So I'm just curious, overall, what is the dynamic there, and how can we make sure that the parents and students feel comfortable whichever way they go?
I think they need to talk to the teachers. The teachers are the ones that really have had those students in their classrooms in the past, and the ones that said, we feel these kids can easily, they can step into an AP class. They can absolutely do, that kind of rigorous work. So I would encourage parents to speak with the teachers, the counselors. This is something that, quite frankly, has needed to be done for quite some time in our district. It was definitely on the list for curriculum and instruction. Our curriculum is at a place now where we can start to clearly delineate on level and advanced. I will say to you, though, just because it's on level doesn't mean it's not going to be rigorous.
Sure.
There is rigor in on level. So that's something to look at too. And as a parent, I would just look at those tables and then have conversations to make, decisions for individual kids.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to add a few comments. Obviously, I have thought about this one a lot, and
Yeah.
it's and talked to lots of people, listened to lots of people about it, and learned a lot about it. And so I do recognize there are a lot of things going on. First of all, I do appreciate all the work y'all have been putting into this. And when you sent those examples and the definitions in the transmittal, I do think that's a big step to helping, the students and the parents try to figure this out. But I will say, already we have students it's already hard to try to figure out should they be on level and honors or the pre-AP in some cases. I do think it's going to still be a kind of a difficult thing to see where a kid fits. And I still feel like, I need to express kind of my concerns going forward with this, because it does look like it may go forward. And part of what I want to make sure happens is that we really still think about those potential things that could go wrong with this, and that we really keep an eye on those as we move forward. Because, I think there's potential, I see concerns kind of at all three of those, kids starting in all three of those levels. And I've heard from parents from kids, on all three of those levels. Maybe the ones that are currently in the AP, I'm not as worried about, but some of them are worried that the rigor of that course would go down. But so we have to keep an eye on that. Probably heard the most from the people in the honors level that are worried about which way to go and feel like they're losing what is that good fit for their child, right? So I've heard that a lot. And then honestly, me personally, I'm almost more worried about some of the kids that are in that, on the border between an on-level and an honors, who may be generally an on-level kid, but now they're pushing themselves to get into an honors class, one honors class, that's a reach. And that now I feel like potentially that it's going to be a bigger jump for them to get into advanced. So I worry about all,
Sure.
I worry about those. So I know I was asked last time, in an ideal situation, what I think we should do. I think I like giving our students the three options. I still fall back on that. I still feel like it gives the students the choice. And then I think fixing some of the other issues would be by reweighting the GPA, right? Whether it's a 4.0, 4.5, or 5.0, or whatever.
Sure.
Like a lot of our peer districts do for that. So,
We would, obviously have to redefine if that did happen in the future, what 4.5 would be, and it would not be just like it has been in the past, because we want to have integrity in our curriculum and in our expectations and in what we're doing with students. So it would be different, and we would delineate that difference. There would definitely be a difference. There would never be like, okay, do whatever, do a project, do what you feel would justify that. So I always would encourage kids, if they're interested and they have the initiative, to pursue rigor, to pursue the higher, expectation. With that being said, I will say we haven't talked much about this, but GT would be served in the regular classroom at the secondary level. The state does not recognize AP or any kind of advanced course as serving GT. So, and I'm happy to link, I think I've linked it many months ago, but I'm happy to relink the House Bill 3 expectation from the state on gifted and talented, and that would be taught in on level. So, even that is a change, and that is one of those trainings that I was saying we need to really, work on with our teachers, is meeting that new expectation. We'll be working on that curriculum in the on-level courses this summer. So that is something, in our plan to address. So I would think that too should give parents some comfort in whatever choice they make. I would always say if a student's highly interested in something, absolutely make it as rigorous as you can for them, because their interest and passion is going to help them be highly successful in that. So.
And I'll just say, I do think, I mean, my hope, of course, is this is a positive for the majority of our students in our districts. And I think there is a lot of positive in it. So I would just make sure we do kind of keep an eye on what are some of the results. What classes do these students end up in? And, you know, are they successful?
Sure.
In these classes, and you know, is this really was this the right step? Because we can make changes all we want, but if we don't kind of keep track of the results, then we don't know if they were the right changes. So
Right, and I would say training is definitely a key part of
Sure.
that, and teacher involvement and voice and instructional strategies, all of that kind of melds together to make that great, engaging environment.
So what is, if looking at a 4.0, 4.5, 5.0 scale in the future is something that's a possibility, what's preventing us from looking at that now?
Well, we have to go ahead and make the changes in regards to pre-AP and structure. That needs to be done now. The course catalog is obviously we're writing those course descriptions and getting the advanced criteria delineated. GPA is another whole factor. So you're talking about starting at 7th grade, phasing in, because some kids start that early with some of those high school courses. So we would need to put together a committee for that, and we would want to do a good job of that. We wouldn't want to, meet once and say we're doing this, right? So that would be a significant undertaking anytime you address GPA, because it affects kids' lives for a good span of years.
So what is our drop dead date on making this change? I guess, because what I'm concerned about is it doesn't sound like from the last meeting and that there's been a lot of parental or student involvement in this process. And now we've got a, email going out to all the parents at some point here soon.
Sure.
And then within 2 weeks after that or whatever, we're going to vote. Is December our drop dead date?
No, it is not.
Okay.
So our typical timeline for anything associated with the course catalog is to try to wrap up in December, because then we prepare print and start the course registration process. Ms. Hester, about February, kind of get situated going into spring break. That is a timeline that has worked with us historically, but we dictate that timeline. So December is not an absolute drop dead date. So we communicate this out. If we have misgauged this and we hear that accordingly, then that timeline could get pushed as needed to ensure that we are on the right track collectively from community standpoint.
Okay. And I'm not assuming that's going to happen. That was,
Sure.
it seemed like it's a possibility, I guess. So,
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
So December is not, it doesn't have to absolutely occur in December, Mr. Ben.
So from listening tonight, it sounds to me like the biggest concern from Ms. McAdams and Mr. Horak is the same. It's those students that are taking honors courses. Can you hear me now? Those students that are taking honors courses currently, where do they fall? And what are they going to choose? Did I hear that correctly, that's the biggest concern?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was getting at. But I go back to, what Dr. Trammell was saying, the definition of advanced. And there's one line that kind of stuck out to me over the weekend, and all courses in CSISD are designed to prepare students for college and career success. So really, I don't want to say it does not matter, because it does, but every course is designed and put forth with the same intention. It depends on the rigor in which that intention is taken. So I agree 100% with what Dr. Trammell said, where it is up to the student and the parents to do their research once this change goes through or however it falls, to do their research of what fits in their lifestyle and their goals upon graduation. So I guess kind of bow tying that all together, that's where I was going with it, and got some good feedback there. So, yeah.
I do like the new descriptions. I think that's very, very helpful and makes it much more clear. And one of my concerns, last month was about identifying kids and pushing kids. And I at that point, I thought my thoughts were that about the teachers, right? The teachers, making sure that the teachers do it. And then, for the past month, I've been able to think about that a little bit more. And so I actually asked Dr. Trammell about if there were other objective, more objective ways to help determine that. And she included in our transmittal about, and she showed it briefly tonight too, that there is, a suggestion with map testing, looking at map testing. So that made me feel a little bit better as well, so that parents can use that to also help determine, as parents and students can use that as well to help determine where they should be. So like everyone, like others that have voiced, I have concerns as well, but I am hopeful that that it's a good decision, and we'll see what other kind of feedback we get.
Two other quick questions. One, I was just wondering, was there much discussion in the meeting about, I know we had put it kind of off the table, but about maybe looking at the GPA, or do we just, I was just wondering if there was anything from the teachers in the committee that thought they might want to address that in the future?
They definitely felt like honors did not warrant a 5.0, that it would, need to be something less if that was considered. But we really didn't dwell on that. We really focused on the task at hand in making a decision for our district about pursuing the College Board's pre-AP, and how that would look if we got all of our curriculum courses kind of in the same structure and aligned for our kids, so that we still have a tier 1 and a tier 2. It's just which one do you want? The online or the regular on-site face-to-face everyday curriculum, I don't even know why I brought up virtual learning in that, excuse me, our regular on-level curriculum is rigorous. It is written to the rigor of the TEKS, and we are going to ensure those GT strategies are embedded in the regular curriculum. House Bill 3 mandates that, and we will have that done, and that, teachers will get training on that. I will say, too, we're working on all of our teachers having their gifted and talented 30-hour certification, K-12, pre-K-12. So that would be helpful, too, to, for parents to know and understand that every teacher will have those skills and that knowledge to implement rigorous instruction in the classroom.
My last thought is just that, and kind of on what we'll see when these emails go out, because at least a lot of the people I've talked to, it has taken about half the time to explain and clarify this, that I know it's confusing to a lot of people. So I know it's taken us a few times to really understand it clearly. So I think it's going to be a little challenge to communicate that in an email to parents. So.
I would recommend looking at those charts and the
Are those going to be included maybe, or links to those?
We could absolutely link those, because I think that was helpful visual too. Is very helpful.
I think so
for
too.
Parents to clearly see. And so
what classes are there today and which ones are going to be? I think that would be helpful for the parents. So.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I guess if there's, a lot of debate and discussion within the community, maybe we could do some type of, I know we got COVID-19, but maybe some type of forum that's through Zoom or something like that, where people could ask questions. Not looking for trouble, but at least
sure,
give a
sure.
different opportunity for the community to voice their concern and ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll make that decision after you. Thanks.
I was going to check to see what dates he was available.
Yeah.
Let me check my calendar.
Respect all conversation around this. This is a challenge by all means. Newsletters from the high school principals go out when we return from Thanksgiving. In their respective newsletters, it'll have some information referencing this, and we'll link in more comprehensive information. And I think in that, and I see Ms. Parkerson here, but we'll touch base with Ms. Elder as well, Mr. Grimes, just provide some avenue for feedback to see where we are with these particular items. And if it causes us pause, then we'll reflect upon that accordingly. Did you get all that down, Dr. Trammell, that I
Yes,
just
sir.
committed you to?
Ms. Parker's
Okay.
back there making some notes. And so we appreciate your input and your thoughtfulness in serving the community. And with that, I will let you do that.
Thank you very much. We will move to item D5, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 2021 CSISD legislative priorities. Mr. Martindale, one of my favorite items.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Just a draft, and we'll take a look at that this evening for any edits or changes that the group may want. We always try to go through this practice prior to the legislative session. It gives us a front-back cheat sheet, highlight points to discuss with our elected officials. So after we kind of review this, make whatever adjustments, this is the information I'll use when I schedule times with Representatives Cassell and Rainey, as well as Senator Schwartner. And I tend to sit down, it just gives them a one-pager to hang on to and say, hey, these are the things that are important to us if you'll keep us in mind as you go through the legislative session. So I want to take a few minutes just to walk through this for any particular questions, adjustments, edits, whatever the collective group desires. The first, and I've tried to break it into chunks, obviously school finance. That's the biggest piece, and I think the piece that was absolutely at the top of the list and probably is most concerning of all. Consider all that we're going through now, state finances and so on and so forth. So try to highlight some pieces in the current system, but basically it comes down to maintain the funding that was approved last legislative session with House Bill 3, because that was significant movement toward the support of public education in the state. And they will have a task at hand to maintain that, considering, again, projected revenue. A piece of that, of course, maintaining funding level is guaranteed by House Bill 3. We'll be asking them to consider funding the full day pre-K. Right now, we get half ADA for those students. So we have to incur that cost somewhere else in our budget. Advocate the state's share of funding public schools by providing at least 50% of the foundation school program. That's the state funding source and formula, as opposed to an over-reliance on local property taxes. Prior to House Bill 3, the state share, and if you look at the funding to the side, that's local. This particular bullet's relative to the state as a whole. Prior to House Bill 3, the state accounted for 37% of funding of public education. The rest was on local taxpayers. After House Bill 3, that percentage did go up to 44%. So we would advocate that future legislation continues to move through that balanced share between the state's obligation as well as the local community on a collective standpoint from the state. Oppose any access to or use of school district fund balances by the state. The rainy day fund for the state versus fund balances for school districts are two different things. And I believe that Ms. Strauss captured that in transmittal a time or two. We rely on that fund balance for cash flow needs because we really begin collecting a significant part of our revenue around December, January, and then again in June when those split payments are due on property taxes. And that revenue and that fund balance gets us through the rest of the year. So we use that for cash flow purposes, and that's unlike the rainy day fund at the state level. So we would oppose any possible action that would require use of our fund balances really to offset the state's commitments.
That's going to need a lot of education to a lot of people.
Yeah. Ensure federal stimulus dollars are used to increase public education funding, not supplant. We went through that this year. You've probably heard Ms. Strauss talk to this a few times. The federal funds that were delivered to the state were actually used to replace the state's commitment to the school districts. So we would want those dollars to supplement, not supplant the state's obligation. Advocated for weighted funding for CTE courses at the middle school. We receive weighted funding for our CTE courses at the high school and even those that are offered at the middle school that are high school credit. Here we'd be advocating for weighted funding for all of those courses, whether high school credit or not, at the middle school level, so we can provide greater opportunities for kids to begin to explore those options and pathways. Accountability, this one seems to kind of continue to float each legislative session as well, but advocate for the establishment of a more comprehensive system that looks beyond high stakes, one-day multiple choice exams to meaningful assessments that have more value. Move to a more comprehensive accountability system that's really, quite honestly, a little more symbolic as what you see with our community-based accountability system, and away from the one-day STAR assessment or in-the-course assessment that places such high stress on our students in trying to assess where they are in a single assessment once a year. Advocate for removal of A through F campus and district ratings that don't adequately reflect all that happens in classrooms. So there's too much reliability on this one-day STAR EOC assessment that is placed on this rating system that really doesn't capture all the positive that's occurring. School safety, in House Bill 3, they did provide for school safety allotment. That runs just shy of $10 per ADA. So it asks that they continue to look and advocate for increased funding for school safety allotment. There is no designated allotment to address counseling or campus-based mental and behavioral health services. We realize that's becoming an increasing need. So possibly considering some type of allotment that is similar to that of school safety for mental health. The TRS piece, just increased state support for TRS pension system to ensure that it remains solvent for the future and not pass that along to district or retirees or current employees increase contribution level, but increase the state support of that program. And also, of course, provide more affordable health insurance options for school districts and employees that align more to the Texas ERS health insurance provided to employees of the state and higher ed, which is different than TRS, which is utilized for school districts. The ERS system is much more comprehensive and more affordable than what's provided to TRS system. Oppose vouchers. Any voucher system, whether it's through tax credits, taxpayer savings grants, reimbursements, or other ways to divert public tax dollars to private entities that have no academic or financial accountability or transparent to the state or the taxpayers. So in essence, no way to divert public tax dollars to other entities that aren't held to the same standard of accountability that public ISDs are. And that can be same with charters. Oppose further expansion of charter schools, increasing in the number of campuses under existing charters, unless they are subject to the same accountability and transparency rules as we are. We just want even playing field when it comes to these types of things. Local control and governance. Oppose legislation or measures that seek to limit school districts or administrators' ability to have representation before our elected officials. Last legislative session, there was a movement to try to limit representatives from our professional organizations, whether it be TASB or TASA, from interacting with our elected officials and lobbying on behalf of school boards throughout the state as well as school districts. And oppose legislation that would take away the current flexibility that we're provided with District of Innovation. We are a District of Innovation that allows us some flexibility with our start date, as well as the ability to take in consideration work experience as opposed to certification for some of our high-need CTE courses. So this could go on for pages and pages and pages. The whole point of this, though, is priorities and a cheat sheet that Kyle and John and Senator Schwartner can reference if and when the time comes. Of course, I have their numbers, and they call periodically if they see different legislation that comes across and say, hey, Mike, how does this impact you guys? So what I would do, once we if we're in a comfortable place with this, again, I will schedule with their offices and I'd go meet with them one-on-one, and they're not sure if they'll actually be in the Capitol in the spring or what their schedule would be, but I tend to also, under normal circumstances, go to the Capitol and meet with them in their office as well. And I can't say enough about Representatives Cassell and Rainey and being friends of public education. They've done a tremendous amount for us, and I have no doubt to continue to do so. But they like these as well. That way they know what's important to us.
So I like all of these as well. And I will say that during the TASB delegate assembly, Dan Huberty spoke, and the one thing that I remembered the most from him was him saying multiple times, now is the time to be talking to your representatives. Not when they're in legislative session, but he said now, start talking to them now. And then also there's quick little easy updates that we can get from TASB. You can sign up for them. It's Dax Gonzalez that sends them out. I think it's not that often, and it's usually just really short. Like I think this week's just talked about fund balances, explaining that, and I mean like a paragraph. So if you guys, want little extra information in your inbox, you can sign up. I find that really helpful because it just reminds me, okay, yeah, there's things we need to be thinking about, need to be talking to our reps about.
Dax does, he puts out, I apologize. Yeah. He puts out an update, a legislative update periodically that comes from TASB.
Yeah, I was just going to say they'll be more frequent when the legislature's in session. So
and I'm already getting some of the pre-filings from the service center, and it's pages and pages and pages. And again, that's why I think it's so important to be able to hand our elected officials a one-pager front and back to the point. These are the ones we absolutely, that are priority to stand for. I do maintaining the funding that came through House Bill 3 and anything more they can do with that, that's going to be the challenge. I think finances are going to be a challenge collectively, whether it's public ed or whatever it may be for our officials in Austin in the spring. So that will be a task before them, no doubt.
Mr. Martindale, this is awesome. The only thing that gives me a bit of pause, being a fan of community-based accountability, is the idea of the state now making it less community-based and more state-based when it comes to a lot of the things that we try to focus on. And just if there's a way to, again, I don't know the answers, but to make sure that it remains community-based as opposed to having state standards all of a sudden for, a lot of the items that are listed there.
Agree.
So.
And it boils down to this, Mr. Ben, local control. And so that districts and communities can determine what's important to them locally and have the authority to make those decisions accordingly.
Can I have 2 comments and 2 questions? I also love this, and I almost want to have it on our website and, hand it out to our constituents so they also see. I think that's very, I think it's so powerful.
We will place it on our website once it's finalized, Ms. McAdams.
Awesome. One of the things that was in our little TASB book about the charter specifically that I didn't know, and maybe you know this, they said that actually charter schools cost the state about $1,100 more
per student. Correct.
But it didn't exactly explain why.
And I'm not sure as to why. There are lots of different things and standards applied to us that are not to charters. And originally I had a little more detail in this one, but I got too far in the weeds, so I pulled it out and stayed with the fact that just the same rules that apply to us apply to them. Why it costs more, I suspect if the same transparency existed from a financial standpoint, we might be able to determine.
I don't know. Yes. Plus, some of that money is
Very good point.
some of that money is going out of state too to companies that own these charters, so which is another reality.
The boards that manage charter systems are not locally elected boards from that community. So information is not as readily available or as would be expected for us to have.
And then my 2 other quick things to see if you thought about putting these on there was, one is just something about the broadband and technology accessibility that I know that's come to light more even with COVID, that the state talking about expanding the broadband connectivity more, especially the rural areas. I know they're aware of that, but I don't know if that's something.
It's interesting that came up in intergovernmental conversation just collectively. Let me dig around and see what I can find up some wording on that and see if I can capture some good wording that we can fit on the front or back side of this, and I will share with the group before I consider it done. But let me look at that one. I have seen that in a few different areas, and that's interesting because that did come up in conversation yesterday in IGC. Of course, the first thing that Representative Rainey mentioned was school finance. And then the next thing that came up from some other people in the room was the connectivity piece.
Then the only other one I thought about was, and again, I don't know if it has to be on here, was just thinking about having the state be more flexible or they have offered some flexibility, but with COVID and everything that's kind of around that, right? That in some places they've offered flexibility and others they may not have. And I don't know if that's really something that should be to the legislative representatives or more to, our commissioner and TEA.
Possibility, and I didn't put that in. I guess I'm being optimistic. I didn't put that in there because I'm hoping we're turning the corner on this one day. So That, and not all of it, but there's tremendous flexibility that can be provided from the commissioner's office. So when I've seen adjustments to a number of things, it has been through TEA and the commissioner's office as opposed to current legislation. So I take a look at that one. I see the connectivity piece more so than putting something related to COVID. The biggest piece on COVID is when we receive, or the federal funds are distributed to the state, they don't pass them along accordingly. So that is captured from that
I was
standpoint.
glad that was in there.
Yeah, so
Very
good.
I love it.
All right, I'll take a look at that one piece, maybe share some wording with the group and move forward with scheduling some times with our elected officials to visit and review with them. Thank you very much for your feedback.
It looks very detailed. Thank you for the good job. At this point, we will adjourn and remind everybody we will come back at 6:45. Meeting's adjourned.